Are you ready for Chelsea today? All ready, yes. There are so many things you do not know about Chelsea. It has been a personal story for me, but we are trying to bring it to the light today. And it is going to bless every one of you, I'm very sure, because I'm tremendously blessed having Chelsea in my life as a life partner. She is more than what I asked God, more beyond what I would expect from any woman. She is awesome, gorgeous. Let me say so those things, just to appreciate her. She's beautiful. She's godly. Chelsea is godly, people. She crossed Atlantic Ocean to find this guy. That's not a joke, okay? Nobody does that. She's smart. She's hardworking. I tell you, she has been a hardworking lady. She loves us so deeply, widely, and everywhere. She, reveals her love to us for children. Most of the time I look good here with the nice shirts and pants. It's because of her. And she does not give up. That's another huge quality of Chelsea. I'm just introducing so that you'll understand what she is really to me. She does not give up. Whether it's a promise of God, whether it's a commitment. She's adventurous. Amen? Great adventurous. She's committed. I can trust her blindly. I can trust her. Finally, a huge one, she's a missionary. Amen? She's a real missionary. Real missionary. That terrifies you because if God calls her tomorrow, somewhere, right? She's missionary. She'll obey the call of God. We can go anywhere where God wants us. So she is such a missionary. So with this introduction, taking much time, let's hear from Chelsea. Are you ready? Are you nervous? Yeah. Really?
Yeah.
No, she is not.
Can I have that little table to put my baby?
Oh, sure. Yep. Are you ready for me, Chelsea? Ready for this great crowd?
I don't know. I'm usually not nervous up here, but I'm a little nervous today because just realizing that I have to be extremely vulnerable. I don't like to be vulnerable.
It's a real life story. Everything, whether negative, positive, struggles, fears, and our real problems, we are going to bring and tell God, or maybe tell people how God was helping us. So my first question for you is this. Can you introduce about yourself, your family, and your education?
Yeah. So I was born July 22nd, 1980 something. He said I couldn't say the year. And I was born in the greatest city in all the land, known as Council Bluffs, Iowa. And I was born to Velda and Larry McFarland, my parents. So that's why he called me Chelsea McFarland, because that's my maiden name. And I usually correct him all the time, and I say, that's not my name anymore. I married you. So I grew up, my brothers were quite older than me when I was born. Todd, who you guys have seen, Todd and Mindy, Todd was 14, Jamie was 16, and Scotty was 18. And I was a big oopsie baby. My mom's tubes were tied when she got pregnant with me. 4 years before me, she had, my dad and my mom had a baby, Laura, but she passed away at birth due to her umbilical cord, and back in the 1980 somethings. We didn't have, like they noticed that the heartbeat was dropping, and by the time they got in there for the C-section, the baby was gone. So I do have another older sister. And then my dad, we are a very blended and mixed family. My dad and mom were both married before they met each other. And so my mom had my 3 brothers with another man, and then my dad had a wife and a daughter, so I have another older sister, Barbara Ann, after the Beach Boys song. So yeah, we're a blended family, and a lot of my siblings are much older than me, and their children grew up like my siblings because I was closer in age to their children than I was to them. So
your education.
yeah, I moved around a lot when I was little. I was born in Council Bluffs. I went to Lewis Central for kindergarten and part of first, and then we moved around to St. Joseph and Avenue City, Missouri, and somewhere in South Carolina, and then back to Missouri. And so I was in a lot of elementary schools from like the time of like 1st through 4th grade, probably about like 6 different schools. And then I moved in with my brother, and I went to Council Bluffs Public School, Gunn Elementary. It's no longer an elementary school anymore in Council Bluffs, but then I went to back to Lewis Central, and I graduated from there. And then I went to University of Northern Iowa for my teaching degree.
Wow, that's awesome. So you are a teacher.
I'm a teacher.
Yes, she's a good teacher, but she does
Some
not
days.
speak English to me, so.
It depends on the day.
Well, next question is very, very important. Most of you have no idea about this. And, you told me, Chelsea, what about moving with your brother? What made you to move to live with your brother, and the stuff you went through as a child?
Yeah. So at the age of 9, I decided that, I was 2.5 when my parents got divorced. And around that same time is when Todd and Mindy started dating in high school. And you've met Mindy. She's the one who has had the kidney transplant, and she comes here. And Todd also, and the 4 girls. But they've been dating since I was 2.5. So I literally don't even remember any time without Mindy. And my mom having older children and then like an oopsie baby, she was almost, like God rest her soul. She was a wonderful woman, but she was almost like done being a mom, I think, by that time, because her kids were already grown. And so I was always with Todd and Mindy. So Mindy always took me, I went on their dates with them, to PG-13 and R-rated movies. I would just shield my eyes when a bad part came. She took me to all of his, he was captain of the football team at Lewis Central. So I went to all the football games and baseball games. And that's how Todd said he met a lot of girls, is because he would bring me to his games. And then I would be passed around, and so I was like his chick magnet. Before Mindy, and so she took me, shopping, and I was always with them. I was either with them or at my Uncle Joe's, and you guys know my Uncle Joe. It was either at Uncle Joe's house or I was at Aunt Mary's house, because things at home weren't great. And my mom met this guy, and they started dating probably when I was around 4 or 5, and then he moved in with us, and he was not a good guy, and he started molesting me at the age of 5. And so then they got married, and it continued and continued, and so at the age of, I think I was 8 or 9, Mindy and Todd got married in the summer of 97. And I had spent the summer with them after they got married. And there were just some things that I didn't tell them what was happening, because I wrote it down on a notepad one time about what was happening with my stepdad, and my mom found the notepad and then said that I shouldn't write such bad things about someone. And so I had to apologize to him for writing bad things about him. And so she didn't want to, later on, she told me she didn't want to believe it because it happened to her when she was a little girl. And so she didn't want to believe that it could happen to me too. And so anyway, it just didn't get better. And she was still with him. And I told Mindy and Todd that I wanted to live with them. And so in February of 98, I moved in with them, and I was 9. And so at the age of 9, I decided to move out of my parents' house. My dad we were living down in a place called Avenue City. It's right outside of St. Joseph, Missouri. And we were in and out of living with my grandparents or being with him, and he was a severe alcoholic, and so things would be even worse when he came home drunk, and so just life wasn't really good. And so I grew up at a young age, and I was mature at a young age because of the things that happened, and decided to move out. And I moved in with my brother, and since February of 98, I've lived with them. They've been my guardians. And by the time I was probably in 7th grade, I had lost all communication with my mom. And I was no longer talking to her because, there was no sense in telling her again if she didn't believe me the first time that I tried to tell her. So I was just done with that. And my dad was living in Council Bluffs with my dad. People say he looked like Tom Selleck, and he was a ladies' man, and he was married 4 times. So he was currently with living with his, I don't know, wife, girlfriend, whatever she was at the time, in Council Bluffs. But he worked so much at IBP, if you guys remember, in Council Bluffs. Before Tyson, it was the Iowa Beef Processing Plant, I believe, IBP. I don't know, I just remember the white and dark green logo all the time. My dad was the head janitor over there, so he wasn't able to take me in and care for me like I should be, so I lived with Mindy and Todd.
Yeah, thank you for being vulnerable to share that incident. It's very important, right? People hide it, but we say it because God is creating a beautiful story from our life, and thank you for that. There is always hope. There is always restoration. There is always... The next part is one of the major part, asking you to share about your salvation experience, baptism, and a special decision that you made when you were young. About that, and the leading a youth group in Campton.
Yeah, so Mindy and Todd always, I was baptized as a little baby Lutheran, and then I was part of a church when I moved in with Mindy and Todd called First Congregational. It's by Bayless Park in Council Bluffs. It's a small little church. And so I went through confirmation there, and then after that, I continued to go through, sorry, I lost my words. I would go every summer to church camp through that church, and I loved church camp every summer. I'm still actually friends with some of the people. The girl who did Noah's newborn photos actually is a girl that I met at church camp when I was a little girl, and we used to be bunkmates, and her name was Chelsea too. And so it's just crazy. We've kept in contact, and she drove all the way from Des Moines to take Noah's newborn photos. So church camp definitely had an impact on me every summer. And then I also had a really great group of friends growing up, and so some of them, Bonnie was part of that, and Natalie, who is a children's pastor in Gretna. And I had a couple other friends who were not friends anymore, but we would go to these lock-ins at Salem United Methodist Church because they had a bigger youth group. They had more kids. And my church wasn't that big to have a big youth group. So we would go to these lock-ins, and I just remember during one of the lock-ins, one of the lady leaders was like talking about purity and about how you should like vow to wait for your husband. And I just remember as like a young middle school girl that I vowed to wait for my husband. And so I didn't really ever question it after that. It was just like, I knew that that's what I should do. So
yeah, that's an important lesson for all the young people at this point of in our history. Purity is a huge question, huge problem. So through your life, we learned that is possible with the help of God. I want you to encourage the young people here, those who are watching us also.
Yeah, I think it's definitely possible. I think it's really hard. When I was growing up, and so now even harder this day and age with social media and all of that. I mean, we had MySpace in high school, but that's about the only social media that I had, and actually I got grounded for having one, but it's fine. I think it's totally possible. I'm not saying that I wasn't tempted, that I didn't have boyfriends, that I didn't, do things maybe that I wasn't supposed to, but I did remain pure for my husband because I think that was possible. And I think it's really important too. Yes. If you can give your husband, she told us, I just remember, if you can give your husband, like the best gift you can give your husband is your purity on your wedding night. And so like there is no other monetary or materialistic gift that you can give your husband. Perfect. Except for your purity. So
that's awesome. Yeah. Can you touch base on your salvation, baptism, and how really you felt God's grace upon your life?
Yeah, so I knew God all my life. I went through confirmation. I was baptized as an infant, but I didn't start like getting to know and like really walking closely with God until probably college. I started kind of hanging out with the wrong group in college, running around with kids who, and people who were living a different lifestyle, and they were just so accepting of everyone that I was like, oh, okay, I'll be part of this. And then it just was not it. And I felt that it was so wrong all the time, but I just wanted to be accepted. And so I just went along with it. But then my senior year in college, I started to be part of this program called BASIC, which stands for Brothers and Sisters in Christ. And every Thursday night they would have like a worship, like a contemporary worship and a message. And then we would all go out to like Denny's or Applebee's or something as a group. And so I found some awesome friends there and really started to get to know God more intimately, and learned about, choosing baptism. I never thought that I had to get baptized because I was baptized as an infant. I went through confirmation, and really I was just confused with all of like the different levels and the different sects of the religion, like the different sections of the religion too. But I really was opened up to the idea that it's really all about a relationship with Jesus, and that's what it's all about in college. And so I started to pursue that after college also. I moved down to Lake of the Ozarks, Camdenton, Missouri, and started getting involved with a church called Potter's House, not to be confused with T.D. Jakes, but that's just the name of the church. And I went through this program for a little while called Celebrate Recovery, which is usually used for like alcoholics or drug addicts, but it also helps people who have gone through like trauma or who are really like codependent and things like that. And so it really helped me go through, with the help of God's word, like deal with the things that had happened in my childhood, and really like come forward and tell Mindy and Todd what happened. And I mean, it was like probably like too late to press charges and things like that. It had happened so long ago. But I was able to at least deal with it within myself, and just kind of give it over to God. And that was really relieving. And so then I made the decision to dedicate my life to Christ and get baptized again there at the Potter's house. So
What the change happened after baptism, being born again?
I just started kind of seeing the world in a different perspective, that I wasn't just being selfish and living for myself, and it wasn't all about like making myself happy. It was about, living for God and for his plan. And so my life kind of took a turn there after I got baptized, because I felt like I started listening to him more and kind of being guided by him, and things started just working out so much better than when I was trying to do things for myself.
That's really a great point. You start listening to God and guided by God after you dedicate your life. That is what happens when you have the relationship with God. That's a great point.
Well, and I was always struggling, like, Natalie and Bonnie, my two best friends, and even my other best friend, Emily, like, they were all getting married. And I was like, seriously, I'm still living in my parents' basement in Camdenton, Missouri. And I'm like, I was like frustrated, because I was like, I'm pure. What's going wrong? Like, what am I doing wrong? And so it was frustrating to wait. Yeah, we will touch that. Oh, yeah. It all started to fall into place once I was following God's plan instead of my own plan.
So next question is another huge part of your life. How did you take care of your sick parents? And share a little bit about them and how you did cope up with their loss.
Yeah, so my dad, my sophomore year of college. So I still didn't talk to my mom from 7th grade. So up until like now, my sophomore year of college, my dad had gotten like a spot of cancer, like just a couple spots of skin cancer here and there. I remember like I was a junior in high school. He had like a spot removed, and then it was fine. It was gone. But then he developed this lump under his arm, and they found out it was lymphoma. And so once the cancer is in your lymph nodes, it just kind of gives it the ability to spread everywhere. And so it was the beginning of my sophomore year, first semester in college, and Mindy called me and was like, listen, I think you need to come home because your dad's not doing well. And so he was then he was going through these treatments, and my dad was tough. He used to ride bulls in the rodeo. He was a tough guy. He was like 6'4", 300 pounds, looked like a tall, larger version of Tom Selleck. And he had this huge mustache and these big hairy eyebrows. I mean, I just remember he was huge. And so like my dad's hands were huge too. And he was just so tough, And so he went through this treatment, and he made it farther in the treatment than anyone else had because his pain tolerance was just so high. And then eventually the treatment wasn't working. And so they said, there's nothing more that we can do for you. And it was just so hard to see my big, strong dad, just so weak and not, just not strong anymore. So I went home and I took care of him. I quit college the first semester my sophomore year. And I quit college and I came home and helped my sister. And we took shifts to take care of him. And and his live-in wife at that time was working at a nail salon, and she was gone from 9 to 9 every day. And so she would do the overnight shift when she got home, but my sister and I would split up the days, and the hospice nurse would come in every now and then, but he didn't want to be in a facility or anything. He wanted to be at home in his living room where he could watch NASCAR and football. So they brought in a bed, and that's where he was. And I don't think you ever really get over it. But you just learn to deal with it as time goes on. And so my dad passed away November 17th of 2007. So it's been a long time, but it still feels like it's yesterday. So I just was so angry for a while because there was so much more that he hadn't gotten to do with me. Like see me graduate college or walk me down the aisle or see my kids. And I never really felt like it was fair. So, but as time went on, like I said, it gets easier. And so just learn to live with it. Yeah. And then, after that is when, after my dad passed away is when my mom reached out to me. After many years of no communication. And so she wasn't a part of my life from middle school all the way up until college. And then we reconnected and we had a big, I don't know, almost like a Indian powwow meeting, but, just coming together and talking about things and talking about my childhood and things that I needed from her if we were going to have a healthy relationship. So that worked out, and I had a few years with her, and then I was living down in Missouri, and she decided that she wanted to move down there. She was working up here at Boys Town. She was a medical coder. So all the codes that, basically they tell the doctors put in a code, and then the medical coders give the codes to send you your bill, basically, as to what services you received. So my mom was really smart. She went through college and got her college degree right after I was born. And so I was a baby when she graduated college, but she was really good at what she did. And so she was a manager of the coders over at Boys Town. So she and I rekindled our relationship, and things were progressing. And then I moved down to the lake, and she ended up having a stroke. It was probably like the spring of 2011 is when she had a stroke, or maybe 2012. I don't know. The years get mixed up. But after that stroke, her health was slowly declining. After that stroke, she never really came back. She never went back to work. And so she decided to move down to Lake of the Ozarks because she wanted me to take care of her. And my other brother was down there too. My two other brothers were up here in Council Bluffs. And so she moved down there with me. She lived with me for a little while, and then she moved in with my brother Todd for a little while. And during that transition of moving out of living with me to moving in with my brother, they found stage 4 colon cancer. And so they found that in September of 2013. And she just continually, none of the treatments were working. It was stage 4. And so almost felt like deja vu, going through it again. I thought once was enough. And then she continually, like, this actually kind of correlates with our story a little bit, but December of 2013, the church that I was a part of was going to take a big 2-week mission trip over Christmas to go to Nairobi, Kenya. And my mom's favorite holiday was Christmas. And I said, this is probably your last Christmas. I really do feel the call to go and I want to go. But I just know now's not the time. And I think it's a good thing that I didn't go because Babu wasn't ready at that time for a wife either. So it actually ended up working out quite well. But I spent that last Christmas with her. January, she had to move back up here. She was in the hospital at UNMC. They moved her to hospice care. And March 2nd, 2014, she passed away. So by the age of 25, I was parentless. Both my grandparents were gone. And at that time, I wasn't really speaking with Mindy and Todd. There was like some dissonance in the relationship according to taking care of my mom and things like that, and some disagreements, I don't know, sibling disagreements, it happens in every family. But I did take comfort in Psalm 68:5, that God is the father of the fatherless. And so I felt like an orphan in the world because my parents were gone and the people who raised me were no longer there. And it was a struggle. It was a rough time, but I had a really good church family who just really stood by me through everything. And so that's what got me through. And so once she was gone, when the people who had gone to Nairobi during December of 2013, and they came back, and one of the teachers and Helen, the Kenyan, they said that they wanted to go back during the summer. And so after my mom passed away, I just felt like now I don't have like any strings holding me here. And so I think now is the time to go. And
that
so
leads to our next question about you are a missionary in heart. I have learned that because somebody crosses Atlantic Ocean to go to Nairobi, Kenya, not want to live in a posh city, but want to work in a slum, run-down slum, I tell you. The sewers were running everywhere, smell, like pigs are everywhere. People live in, almost like the iron sheets, house made out of iron sheets. Nairobi, in one side of Nairobi is very posh, very rich, very nice. The other side of the city is very poor. So missionaries all the way coming from America, enjoying all the good stuffs here, having the luxury lifestyle, coming to this country. I was in a rich church, by the way, very posh area. I didn't visit the slums quite often because my ministry never required to be there. But I was with the other type of people. But when she came, the missionaries came, so that's going to lead, because they were choosing to come to work in slum, not in the right nice areas, where you just go and preach the gospel. No, it is all about socially to uplift the downtrodden too. So they are coming that way. So my next question is this. You are a missionary in heart, because I learned that. While I was, they came and I saw the true heart of Chelsea. They could go to the rundown slum, right? Day and every day and work. You are a missionary. How did that happen? And how God was flipping your next chapter of life. Very important. God and the circumstances.
Well, I can definitely tell you that it was not my plan. It was his. And I never imagined, if you ask any of my friends from high school or college, I would have probably been the last one that they picked to be a missionary, just because I'm just so naturally high maintenance. And I don't know. I just am the way I like to go shopping, and I like Starbucks, and I like pedicures and manicures, and I like clean things, and I don't like to get dirty, and I'm not an outdoorsy girl by any means. Put me in the air conditioning all day, every day, and I'll be real happy.
Kills us turning the AC down in the house.
Yeah.
66, 65.
Put on something comfy and cozy. I bought him a nice cozy robe for him to wear. I mean, it's not like I'm making him like be naked in that cold, but he's fine. He doesn't actually suffer. So, and that's another thing, like going to Africa when I really don't like the heat, and we lived without air conditioning the 3 years we were there. So it's really surprising to a lot of people. So that's why I always say that it was definitely not my plan.
That's right.
And so when I, was born again and I got baptized, that's what I mean by I just started like following his guide and his plan. And it turned out so much better for me. Maybe not all the amazing materialistic high maintenance things that I needed or wanted, but those weren't necessarily my needs. So, I knew that was my time to go. They said they were teaching in the slums. There was a teacher shortage in the slums. And the pictures and the videos that they showed, my heart just like absolutely like swelled with love for those kids, and I didn't even know them yet. And so I just really wanted to go and help those kids and be with them and teach them and love them. And I warned everybody back home that I might come home with one of them. And little did I know that I would come home engaged instead of...
Yeah, before we go there, talk about the slum ministry and the situation that the people are living.
Yeah, so I was teaching like 5th and 7th grade math and English, because by that time they were able to understand enough English for me to teach to them in English. It was a very rundown, mud floors. There were times where we had to have a couple of the kids go chase the goats and the sheep out of the schoolrooms, because I'd be teaching and goats would be like, I'd be like, they had blackboards, but things were not great. And so these kids were in the slums. The city of Nairobi, and like most places where a slum is, they don't recognize it as part of the city, so they don't put any public schools there. So there are no public schools for these kids to go to because they're outcasts. They live in the slums. They're nobodies. They're not recognized by anybody. And so a lot of like churches and organizations. So the school that I was working at was called Imsedo Beijing. And so a lot of, there's a huge group from Beijing who came in and helped set up this school. But these kids were wearing like tattered, ripped up. They had to wear a uniform every day to school. And so, I mean, these kids it was the only hot meal that they got. But if they were unable to pay their school fees, then they weren't allowed to come to school. And so a couple of kids would like sneak into school because they wanted to learn and they wanted that hot meal, but they knew that they hadn't paid their fees yet. So they would come a little late and they would sneak in, and I would never, ever, ever kick kids out of my class. And so I was like, you can just stay and learn. But the situation, I was teaching about like 60 fifth graders math, and there was probably only one textbook to every like 3 kids. So it was a rough situation, but yes. I think, honestly, I wish like these kids in America could go and see that situation to see how I don't know, like how well off they are in a public school here, Yeah,
gratefulness.
Yeah.
Did you learn gratefulness from the little kids?
Yeah, and I mean, just the way that football, meaning soccer, is a really big thing over there. And so Manchester and, I don't know, there's one, it starts with an A, I don't know soccer teams, but one of the teams is called Chelsea. like it's, I
Yes.
don't know, it's a Europe football team.
Yes.
And so they all thought that my dad owned the football team, and that's why my name was Chelsea. I said, you just go ahead and believe that. You're right. My dad was not a janitor in America. But they just loved, and so my name was Madam Chelsea. And so if you ever hear him sometimes refer to me as Madam Chelsea, that's what that's from. And so they would, instead of saying teacher, they would say cha, cha. Like, so like teacher, cha is what it got shortened to. So cha, cha. And so they would come up, and a lot of the little kids were just so fascinated by my hair and my white skin. So normally I would wear like long pants and like tennis shoes because we would get really dirty there. But I would wear a t-shirt because it's so hot. And after the first couple days, I definitely started wearing my hair up because little kids would come by and like brush my hair just because it felt so different than theirs. And they had never seen it before. They come up and they like pet my skin.
They call you Muzungu.
Yeah, Muzungu, Muzungu, which means white person in Swahili. So I would say Mwafrika, Mwafrika, which means African in Swahili because they were calling me white person.
And they call Indians Mohindi.
Mohindi, yeah. So, and I just fell in love, and I knew that I wanted to be there longer. And it just so happened that Babu was hosting our team, and
That's the next question.
things happened.
We have 3 more questions. We will borrow you maybe 5 minutes more time from you today. So next question, how did you hear God? Because next chapter is a huge step in your life. How did you hear God to choose your life partner? Then also, you always said this, there is a one-man audience.
Yeah. I showed up to Nairobi 2 days after he had come back from India. And I think some of you guys have heard this part, but he was shown quite a few.
Three girls.
Oh, quite a few. 3 girls.
3 girls and
to possibly.
daughters.
Yeah, to possibly date, to possibly not date,
Marry
possibly
them.
marry. And he didn't like any of them. So I guess, I mean, I don't know. I wasn't there. So that's his story. And
Today's your story. Say yours.
okay. So I showed up and I didn't know anything. Helen and Sarah were making all of the arrangements because they had been there before. Helen was from Kenya. Sarah had been there on the Christmas trip, and she was coming back. And so I was like, well, I'm just along for the ride. I'll pack my suitcases and do whatever. And you guys let me know what you make up for the plans. And I trust you and it's whatever. So I was just along for the ride, really. And excited to get to the kids. And then I show up and this handsome man walks out and, and so he walks out.
Be available.
He walks out and he shook our hands, cause that's the appropriate way to greet new people. And so he was like, hey, and it was like, for me, honestly, it was kind of like the skies opened and was like, oh, there you are. I've been waiting for you. Like, that sounds like so romantic comedy cliche, but it really was like, oh, I've been looking for you. There you are. Took a while to get to you. I've been waiting. But I was just like kind of brushing it off. I had never been outside the country. I had never been on a huge international mission trip like this. And people warned me, like you get so attached and your emotions and your heart is just really like, it's just really emotional thing to do is to go on an international mission trip. And so, the first 2 weeks, I was just really fighting it. I was there for 32 days. And the first 2 weeks, I was just really fighting it. And we would stay, after we would come home from the slums, he would be home from the church and we would sit and Sarah and I would journal because we kept a journal. And so those are fun to look back on now. But we would just journal everything that we had experienced in the slums and, our feelings and things like that. And we would sit down and we would like have dinner, all of us as the team and Pastor Babu, and we would then start talking, and our conversation
Yeah, we start sharing stories.
Yeah, we would start sharing stories, and he thought I was like married with kids. Like he had no clue. I wasn't. Now I am to him.
The evening night stories come together, share our ministry stories. And we pray together as she starts storying. I was hearing more about her. She's a bachelor, she's not married and all of that. Then there was some sparkling here and there. Oh.
And so the handshake turned into a hug before bed. Yeah, it's fine. And then I think feelings were definitely starting to grow. And there was, there was a day it was July 7th. And I remember because it was called Saba Saba. And Saba is the Kiswahili word for 7. So it was 7-7, Saba Saba. And it was like, I don't even remember like what it was an anniversary of, but it was not a safe day to go to the slums because it was a day where riots and fights and things like that would usually break out in the slums, and it just wasn't safe to travel to the slums that day. Happened to be a Monday. He had Mondays off, and so we were all staying home. Well, we sat down and had a pretty serious conversation, and he was like, "So, are you ready to marry me?" And I was like, "No, you're crazy. Like, I don't even know your last name. Like, this is like, no.
I'm an
nope,
Indian
I'm not."
because I don't need to date. We just see girls and ask them, are they ready for marriage? Then we engage, we get married in three months' time.
No.
So I was ready, quite ready.
I was like, "You haven't even taken me out to dinner, like, let alone want to marry me." No, absolutely not. And I was like, "I really don't think you actually understand what you're getting yourself into. I'm very high maintenance. I'm very needy. I need you to be like pre-warned, and then like after like ball and chain, we're like locked into this. You can't decide later that like you don't want this to happen. Like I've learned from my parents that I don't want divorce. Like it's not biblical. It's not anything that I want." And so I just really wanted to put everything out on the table and really forewarn him before he really signed the contract. So
on that day you were very depressed and went to bed.
I was really sad because I knew that if I came home and said that I met this Indian man in Africa and I wanted to marry him, no one, first of all, would understand. And second of all, my older brothers would have been like, "I just lost my mom 4 months ago. No, you're not moving to Africa and getting married to a man we've never met." Absolutely not. Like, and I just knew that my whole family would think that I'm just absolutely crazy. So I was crying to God because I really felt that like he was the one, but I knew that everybody else would disagree. And so I didn't know whether I could live with knowing that I had given up the one, or knowing that I wasn't going to be able to please everyone like I usually like to do. And so I went to bed that night just crying and praying and like, what am I going to do? What's the decision? Like, what should I do? What's the right thing? And I woke up, and it's one of the very few times that I've actually audibly heard God, and he said, "There's a one-man audience for this life, and that man is me. And so this is the path that I've laid before you. It's okay to take it." And so that one-man audience is just always stuck with us, because really I'm not here, even though I'm a people pleaser, I'm not here to please everyone. I'm here to please him. And so if I'm doing right by him, then I'm doing right.
That's right.
And perfect. I don't need to please anyone else. So
yeah, that's what happened. So she got up with this voice of God. There is one man audience. That is going to be our first book, actually. We are actually planned to write a book in a couple of months' time, entitling The One Man Audience. This is all about our life story. And she brought that title from God. There's a one man audience. So you live for him. I live for him. We all live for that one man, our Lord Jesus Christ, nobody else. So that's really profound.
So I got up and he was getting ready for church and I was like, all right, I'm in. You want to do this? Like, are we going to do this? And then I was like, well, let's practically think about this. I already signed a teaching contract in Stover, Missouri, which is crazy because I actually taught where Noel and Ruby used to be pastors from, and now we're here in the same place. It's crazy. So I was a teacher in Stover, Missouri, where they used to live. And I was like, I already signed my teaching contract. Like, let's be realistic about this. I do need to go home. I have a return ticket that the church has purchased because I'm on a mission trip. So I was like, I'm going to go home with the promise of us dating on Skype. But first, before I leave here, you better take me out to dinner. That's my one requirement. Please, just like take me out for a nice dinner.
I was literally scared because in other countries, pastors don't go with girls easily. So I was hesitant, but then finally convinced if I need.
You wouldn't even hold my hand. I was like, I'm going to marry you and you won't hold my hand?
So we went.
Do you like me?
I don't know how you guys date here terribly. I have no clue about how long you date, how many years you date here, all of that. I have no clue. Being a typical Indian pastor, you know, typical Indian guy, how to approach a girl to be married. So that is what I was doing right in my sight. That was not right. But that night, and we had dinner, and then I gave her a promise ring that I will stay for it because the pastors have a high demand of approached by girls easily. Sorry to say, yeah, that's the truth.
He was in high demand, apparently, and I was the front runner, so...
Then I said, don't worry, I will wait for you. I will not get hold of any girls here.
Yeah, there were actually a few girls in the church who were a little upset that...
Fasting and praying.
Yeah, fasting and praying to be Babu's wife. And here I come from America, and we just fell in love. So unfortunately, that fasting and praying did not work out in their favor. But it was God's will,
and
so...
my mom always says, God picked your rib all the way from America, Babu. He brought it together. That's my mom's version of story. Beautiful. The last question, because of the time, I know there's a lot of things. We are going to write our books. We're going to elaborate our stories soon. Pray for us so that we have a dedicated time to write down the stories, publish a book in a year time. So that's our next huge project. We are thinking as a family. For the ministry.
Well, let me finish this up. So,
yes,
so anyway, I did come back to America with a promise ring, and everybody was like, what kind of water did you drink there? Like, are you nuts? No, you should not do this. This is a bad idea, Chelsea. Do not do this. And I was like, no, you guys don't understand. Like, I am going to do this. Like, I am going to do it, so watch me. And then in 50 years when we're still married, then the joke's on you. So I did deal with a lot of criticism, and I don't like that personally. I don't like to I don't want other people to feel like I'm wrong, or like I said, I'm a people pleaser. I like to please people. And so when I'm not pleasing people, I'm not very happy. And so, I don't know, it's a blessing and a curse, I guess. So I went back. This is the time, this was in the fall of 2014. And if you remember, in 2014 is when Ebola was a really big thing. You remember Ebola? Now we have COVID. So Ebola was like a huge thing. I had just been to Africa, which a lot of people think is one country. It's not. It's a continent full of other countries.
58 countries.
58 countries. So they thought that I was going to be bringing back Ebola. I was teaching in a very small town. I was one of 2 fifth grade teachers. There were people calling the school and the superintendent asking that their children be pulled out of my classroom because they didn't want their kids to get Ebola. The word got out that I was going to be going back over Christmas break to visit him, and we were going to officially get engaged and have the engagement ceremony. And like make things official. And my superintendent told me that I was not allowed to go. And if I did choose to go, then I would have to take a 21-day unpaid quarantine. And I said, no, I don't think that's how that works, because I'm not taking off any days of school and you're not allowed to tell me what I can't do and can do on my days off. And so I got my union rep involved. Long story short, it was crazy in a small town and I was very targeted. And not being from there, and so this outsider already, it was rough couple of months, but I was done teaching in December,
We need to say
and
that
finished.
everything works together for good for those who
It
love the
does.
Lord.
It does work together. I was actually paid my full contract and insured my whole contract, but I was done teaching in December. So that actually, got into a big car accident right before, at the beginning of
Paid off
December.
the car too.
Totaled my car, and so I didn't have to sell my car. I got back enough money to pay off the car loan and for a ticket to Nairobi.
God provides,
So
bringing the disaster.
yeah, so it's crazy how it worked out, but I went back for another 60-day stay from January through March. And during that time, we decided not to do the K-1 visa for him to come here, because we both knew that our hearts were with missions in Kenya. And so we decided to get married in Kenya.
Yeah, we will continue the story in our book, or maybe you can approach it. Probably you know that the last question, because of the time we already passed. Thanks for your kindness. As we conclude your story today, what is your favorite Bible verse, a song, and also most important encouragement for our church? Yeah.
My favorite verse is kind of cliche, so you can make fun of me if you want, but it is Jeremiah 29:11, because he has proven time and time again that he does have plans that are good for me, to prosper me for, a good future and for hope. And so as cliche as that is, it's proven to be very true in my life. And I love that verse, and I know that his plan is always greater and much better than I could even fathom for my life.
Awesome. Any song and anything you want to say to the congregation?
I love, if you've never heard Rooftops by Jesus Culture, it's really good. You should listen to it. And This I Believe by Shane and Shane. It's just very good statements of your faith. And I love to jam out to those. And really my encouragement to you guys is to just do it. Step out of the boat, take the risk, and trust God.
Amen.
Follow his plan, and his plan is always better than yours, because it has been for my life.
Awesome. Wow. We are done with the story today. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Wow.